Story 1. I told him I had to leave in 1.5 hours. He told me that was oddly specific and I should have rounded up to 2 hours instead of 1 hour and 50 minutes. I clarified that I had to leave in 1 hour and 30 minutes and he said that's actually 1.3 hours. Story 2. She seemed to be confused about the difference between flamingos and penguins, but insisted they were not real because she had grown up in Alaska and never seen any. Story 3. How do oil companies know where to build gas stations? She thought that there was a gasoline bubble underground that they would tap into and run a line straight to the pump. She was working for Chevron. Story 4. She had a new telescope and thought it would be really cute to check out the stars after a date one night. I do not remember the full conversation, but at some point I joked about us being stuck together on this giant ball in space. She looked through the telescope again and said, "So you believe that, huh?" I just stared at her blankly because I was afraid of that question going any further. Anyways, I am happy to share that we did not last long. But did you guys know that there is totally a lot of evidence that our planet is probably not round? Story 5. I mentioned that I loved stargazing on camping trips because it would actually get dark enough to see the Milky Way. Apparently, I was lying to him, as it is impossible to see the Milky Way since we are in it. The same person also refused to believe that huckleberries existed. Again, this came up when I was talking about picking and eating huckleberries on a hike. He interrupted me to tell me I was wrong because huckleberries were made up. Everyone says dumb things sometimes. What was remarkable was how confidently he went out of his way to convince me I was wrong, incorrectly, and then got upset at me for arguing when I did not immediately agree that something I had been looking at or eating for most of my life was in my imagination. Story 6. I opened a drawer in my bathroom and noticed a bunch of cotton swabs scattered all over my hairbrush and towels. When I asked him about it, he said he dumped all my cotton swabs out and threw away the box they came in to help me save space in the drawer. Story 7. I was cutting plywood on my table saw. She came up behind me when I didn't know she was there and decided to help me by pushing a sheet when I was already pushing it through. It lurched and I almost lost a finger. She had no idea why I was angry at her. Story 8. I was going into anaphylactic shock at a restaurant due to an unknown allergy. My throat was closing and I had no neck due to swelling. He asked if I wanted to go outside to get some air. We were sitting on the patio. Story 9. Her. Look at the moon. That isn't right. Me. What do you mean? Her. You're not supposed to see the moon during the daytime. The government put that there to spy on us. Me. Story 10. I was dating a guy, and we worked together but we were on opposing shifts. I came in for turnover, and he let me know that he couldn't get into the computer in the office and the password on the sticky note was not working. The sticky note was very straightforward. Written like, login, XYZ, password, XYZ. I thought, that's weird because I literally used it the night before. I got to the computer, punched in the password, and boom, I was logged in. I asked him what he was putting in, and he said, password, XYZ like it says on the sticky note. Darling, the password is XYZ, not password, XYZ. Not his brightest moment. And the kicker is he did this for several days and thought it was an issue everyone was having. Story 11. Only after a year and a half of dating did he reveal to me that the world is flat, we live in a dome, the sky is a projection, and all the horizon-related experiments to confirm Earth's roundness are logically flawed. He knows my dad and I have fancy telescopes, do astrophotography, and stargaze together on a literal observatory on our roof. He wasted my time. Story 12. Senior year of high school, I had been offered a full-ride college scholarship for athletics. My girlfriend at the time was always annoyed with how much time I dedicated to my sport. In a particular conversation, I made my case that without the sport, I probably wouldn't be able to go to college, and even if I could, I would be riddled with debt. The scholarship was a life changer for me. She got mad that I called the scholarship a life changer and demanded that I quit my sport so we could hang out more. We broke up about 90 seconds after that comment. Story 13. When he ran out of gas while in line at the Starbucks drive-thru, right across the street from the gas station, I told him to get gas first because his car was low, but he really needed that iced caramel macchiato. I asked why he didn't listen to me, and he replied with, I thought I could make it. He ended up pushing the car through the drive-thru and got his coffee while doing so, then parked the car in the lot and called a tow truck to take it back home, instead of to the gas station across the street. No, he did not get any gas that day. He waited until his dad got off work to bring a 3-gallon jug of gasoline because I refused to enable that behavior. Edited to add, I fell asleep after commenting. I feel like I'm in the twilight zone with all these comments. Thank you for the reward. Yes, I'm still in a relationship with him. He's a space case, but so am I, just not to that extent. I have not let him live that day down, and he has learned to get gas first every time now. The worst part of that day was the fact he didn't remember he had a canister for gasoline in his trunk. He told me he towed the car home instead of to the gas station because he was too embarrassed and ashamed of himself. I asked why he still pushed his car through the Starbucks drive-thru, and he deadpan goes, I had enough stars for a free drink. I was going to put the extra money I saved in my tank. My brain broke for a second because he uses the preloaded Starbucks app. How was he going to use $7 of his preloaded Starbucks app at a Chevron? He still hasn't answered me, and it's been 2 years since it happened. Edited to add 2. I showed him this, and he flipped me off and said if this makes me famous, he demands royalties. Story 14. The dude I was dating turned out to be the worst kind of know-it-all because his facts were mostly wrong. He told me not to tell him that because he doesn't like it. It's been done before and it's not true. I hadn't encountered an incident of it yet, so I memorized that, but didn't think about it much, even if I thought it was weird to tell me that. Fast forward a few days, we were sitting at dinner at a restaurant talking about whatever when peripherally something about human organs floats by and that the pH of the stomach is about 3. He looks at me with a smile of deep condescension and says, the pH of the stomach is 10. He said that so final and with such an air of superiority that I stopped mid-sentence. You don't want to be rude back, and mistakes happen anyway, so I tried to tell him politely that he might have a false memory there or a teacher in his past might have mixed something up. I just didn't want to embarrass him more than he already did himself in public. But he was committed to this. My name, I know the pH of the stomach is 10. You're wrong. I told him to please look it up because I'm a biologist and I'm confident enough in my education. He did, and he was wrong. There were a couple of similar incidents after this one. Hilariously, when we broke up, one of his gripes was, I believe you think I'm stupid. In reality, it was that and the fact he was not only wrong but malicious and utterly confident in both. Story 15. I had an ex literally call me to ask how to make pasta from a box, and then asked what equipment he needed to do it. He was 35. I was also the idiot for dating him. Story 16. I wasn't fully dating this guy, but at Sonic, I said, Hi, can I have a slushie? The worker replied, Sure. What flavor? You know, a slushie. Yes. But what flavor do you want? I just want a slushie. Like a regular slushie. Okay. But, sure, a regular slushie. The order is brought out, he takes a drink and goes, I think this is just ice. It has no flavor. I thought it was so funny that they gave him a plain slushie instead of just defaulting to cherry or something. I could have helped explain to him while he was ordering, but I was too stunned to speak. Story 17. She was doing a college course and had to write an essay on symbolism in The Dark Knight Returns. She wrote an essay on the bat symbol and how it symbolizes Batman. Story 18. I was in the passenger seat of my ex-girlfriend's car. We were 22 at the time, and while driving, I opened the glove compartment to store something. She turned and screamed, What are you doing? Confused, I asked what was going on. Apparently, as a kid, she used to play with the glove compartment all the time, so her parents told her that opening the glove compartment in a moving car would damage the engine. She was 22 and still believed this. Story 19. Not a girlfriend, but a family member. We lived in Alaska, and she and her husband, who lived in the contiguous United States, were talking about coming to visit us. She talked about driving and was excited to drive on the bridge. We asked, What bridge? The one that goes from Washington State to Anchorage, she replied. We told her that did not exist. She'd have to fly. She was surprised to learn that there wasn't a bridge but excused it by saying, Well, I'm just not good with geography. Story 20. Didn't date this guy. I worked with him. He was somehow a master electrician. He would say, "Be specific when you talk." We told him the word was specific. He said no, it's specific because of the ocean. We showed him online the definition of specific, and he legitimately said, anyone can fake an internet article. He was on Wikipedia. He also had a fiancée who ended up in the hospital for months, and he never once visited her. When I, a woman, asked him why not, he said, she was on drugs and would never know I was there anyway. This woman wasn't in a coma. She had had a huge tumor removed and complications after, and yeah, she was on lots of meds, but she was awake most of the time. Dude couldn't figure out why she broke the engagement the minute she left the hospital. Story 21. I was in my 20s. I was dating a guy who knew I was from California. He made a comment about the Golden Gate Bridge and said, I bet the Golden Gate Bridge must have cost a fortune to build with all of that gold. He was cute, but it didn't last long. Story 22. We were at a buffet and he was eating popcorn shrimp and said, these pork chops are good. Obviously, I was confused. Apparently, the popcorn shrimp was mislabeled and he didn't know what popcorn shrimp or pork chops were. Story 23. Not exactly dating, but regular sex. We were talking afterward, and she told me she determined I had no sexually transmitted diseases because you looked clean. I don't have any, but it just makes me wonder if she ever found out the wrong way. Story 24. He was shocked to learn that he wouldn't be able to pick up our car rental that was under my name using my credit card because they always let me pick it up using my dad's card when we were on family vacations. I had to explain to him that he and his dad have the same first and last name. Story 25. I read this to my wife and asked her what was her moment. She replied, there have been so many, it's hard to pinpoint just one. We've been together 40 years. Story 26. She was fidgeting with her keys, and on her keyring was a can of pepper spray. She was chewing on it like you would a pen or pencil and accidentally triggered it into her own mouth. Story 27. For me, the last girl I went on a date with blindly crossed a busy street in front of cars in both directions, which had to slam on their brakes to avoid her. I waited and crossed when there was no one coming. When I finally caught up to her, I asked, what was that? And she said, pedestrians have the right of way. Story 28. When she said she thought we could drive to Hawaii because it looked close on a map, she also asked how fish breathe under the ice. She was very pretty. Story 29. Girl I dated before meeting my wife. Me. So, what's your long-term goals or plan? Her. I'm going to win the lottery and retire. Me. Haha, yeah, I'd love to too. But really though. Her. I'm serious. I buy a ticket every week. I'm going to win millions and retire. We didn't last long. Story 30. I was dating this girl in the early 2000s. There was an upcoming federal election. She was reading the names on the campaign signs on people's lawns and said, wow, no one is voting for Bush. We live in Canada. Story 31. She thought that cars used gas to move, so if you left a car idling, it would never run out of gas. I asked her if you could let a car idle for 5 years without running out of gas, and she thought about it for a minute and said yes. Story 32. He asked why I always made sure to use the bathroom after sex, since I'm prone to urinary tract infections, which is fine enough. But when I told him, backed up by advice from both my regular doctor and gynecologist, he argued with me about it and continued picking fights about it for almost a week until he searched online and looked at 3 separate web articles before he finally, begrudgingly accepted that urinating afterward helps lessen the chance of getting one. I still have no idea what his issue with it was. Story 33. When I explained that paying for college debt on credit cards was incredibly foolish, it financially handicapped her and her family for almost a decade, and she still didn't understand why after I explained the math. Story 34. Couldn't correctly calculate a 20% tip on a restaurant bill using a cell phone. Tried 3 times before giving up and letting me do it. The bill was $40 even. Story 35. He was reading my routing and account number out of my checkbook to someone on the phone at 9:30 p.m. He didn't have one because already idiot, and when he hung up, he told me we were getting money deposited into the account for some tax he overpaid years before. I said, no, dumbass, my account is probably already empty. Story 36. He pointed to Texas on a map and said we should visit California someday. We lived in Pennsylvania, so we were not close to either of those states, but they are the most easily discernible states on a United States map. He was homeschooled and decided in second grade he did not want to do school anymore, so his mom would sign off that he finished his lessons. Story 37. Him. We should do a vacation soon. Me, absolutely, and I think we should do something big, like out of the country. Him. Sounds good. What were you thinking? Me, not really sure, but I don't want to do the typical South America trips. I'd like to branch out and do something really cool that not a lot of people our age are doing. Him. Okay, so any specific places in mind? Me. I actually just saw a deal on a travel site for a safari trip in Tanzania. Him. But you just said you don't want to go to South America? Me, yeah, exactly, it's in Africa. Him. Okay. But you literally just said you didn't want to go to South America, so why are you recommending that? Happened nearly 10 years ago, but that was pretty much our conversation. He was 24 with a college degree. I don't remember the exact conversation that took place after this exchange, but he apparently thought that the continent of Africa was a country in South America. Stayed with him for another 6 months or so, and there were many moments of pure, unadulterated stupidity. The breaking point was him putting ketchup and cheese slices on my homemade pad thai. I was dating a 24-year-old man with the mind of a 7-year-old.